When the original Superhot came out in 2016, it was heavily praised for its completely unique mechanics that no other FPS shooter had really done, apart from maybe a game like Time Shift back in 2007. Superhot focused on puzzle solving more than actual gunplay, and I hate saying this phrase, but it did make you feel like you were a John Wick or Neo from the Matrix type character, or any action hero played by Keanu Reeves apparently. Superhot focused on the mechanic of time manipulation. Your character and everything else within the game only moved when you moved, meaning you could watch bullets slowly approach you as you assess the situation around you, seeing who was the better target to take down and where you should move to next to keep safe from dying. It was a really brilliant game, but did suffer from some problems like a pretty vague and not that inspiring story, pretty repetitive level design, some pretty unfair moments within levels that made you want to rage very quickly, and some said that graphically it was pretty boring. When the VR version came out, it had new levels, but it was pretty much the same thing at the end of the day. Just this time it utilised your VR headset and gave the player more missions to get through, which is good in my eyes. It meant the game wasn't just a cheap VR port. However, Superhot Mind Control Delete was to be a second game for the series, a chance for new changes to the overall gameplay and a new story, or a story that linked to the original, new levels, new weapons, and just a new take on this unique mechanic driven puzzle FPS that came out 4 years prior. So is Superhot Mind Control Delete worth getting for those who are fans of this indie shooter, or is it just more of the same? Well, welcome to WiseFish, and this is my review of Superhot Mind Control Delete.
Super hot. Super hot. Super hot.
Let's talk about the story first, something that shouldn't be a huge focus, but just in case anyone is looking for a unique indie game with a story.
Super hot. Super hot.
Superhot Mind Control Delete had me intrigued from the beginning, but that quickly faded as I kept playing. There is this mystery to every level as you venture through different areas, doing much the same as before, getting harder as you progress further along. The main story looks at the idea of repetition, which actually matches the gameplay very well. After you complete certain level hubs, you are given either some code with some cryptic words, which seem like a warning going forward, almost as if the game is trying to communicate with the user, and every milestone you get to, there's a story level to some extent. Here you venture through these narrow and empty corridors where the world looks like it is falling apart. The further in the game you get, the more it glitches about, sending you back a couple of paces for example, or adding other things to this small section. When you get to the end of the corridor, you see a red enemy, like the ones you kill in every level, sitting at a computer, and the way you finish this level is by killing the red guy, which then resets the game as you go back to the main menu and have to press more to continue the weird, mysterious story. This at first was pretty cool. It felt like it was actually following the original game's story regarding the employees playing the Superhot game. And now I was maybe a virus or something within the game file corrupting it, sending me into this never-ending loop trying to find a way out. The problem I found going on more and more was that it just never really went anywhere. It felt like you had to be this lore guru to piece together everything, and there was no linear storyline that explained anything really. I like mystique things like this, but the further I got along, I was saying to myself, I don't really have the faintest idea what I'm doing anymore. But really what it comes down to is, if you were a fan of the original story, then you will like this one as it is told in a somewhat similar manner. If you love the behind the scenes lore of these types of titles, then I'm sure there is tons to dive into from lore YouTubers, but for me personally, it just didn't grab me at all. But before I talk about the gameplay, I want to quickly mention my biggest problem with the story, and that was its ending. Now this is a spoiler section, so if you don't want to know how the game ends, then you can skip forward to the next gameplay section. Superhot Mind Control Delete did something that I'd imagine Hideo Kojima would have had sweet dreams about. Mind Control Delete originally, when you got to the ending, had the player wait for 8 hours, and I don't mean in-game time. I mean you had to have the game actually open for 8 hours straight whilst you wait for an in-game loading bar. I'm not kidding. Now if you are like any regular adult, you'll know that having a game open for 8 hours straight completely idle is not only a pretty unfair ask due to jobs and family, but it's also also a ridiculous idea to just sit and wait for a loading bar when you could be playing other games, for example. I mean, I hate PlayStation loading times, but this is even more ridiculous. The game developers did eventually change it to 2.5 hours, but still the idea is really fundamentally flawed and makes for a really snobby type of finish to what was a pretty fun game, completely ruining the pacing and makes you feel like you wasted your time with the whole game. The developers even said they wanted to make it 24 hours, and if they did, that would have just been absolutely outrageous. The only new thing you got was a core mode, which just gave you a single health core, and you know, that's pretty bad. At the end you also got these weird mini games like from an old Atari system. They're fine, but I mean it's not Superhot and kind of takes you out of the Superhot experience. It makes sense to the story, I guess, to some extent, but it's just an odd choice really. I feel like it was trying to be like, dare I say it, Five Nights at Freddy's with its 8-bit levels that explore the story. Honestly, in my eyes, the decision to make people wait actual real time was a terrible decision to make. It's such a pretentious idea from the developers to have the players waste originally 8 hours at the start and now 2.5 hours of real game time just to have the game reset completely. It doesn't even take 8 hours to download the game, so why you have to wait 8 hours for it to reset just makes no sense. It makes for a really great game to have such a poor ending, at least for me. But anyways, let's talk about what made Superhot stand out so much in the first place: the gameplay.
Super hot. Super hot.
The main question I had going into Superhot Mind Control Delete was, is it going to be different from the original game? And the answer is yes, quite different actually. On the surface, from just watching these clips, you'll probably be thinking this looks exactly the same as the original, but Mind Control Delete has gone down much more of a roguelike style of design. Now to start with, there are a variety of new enemies and weapons, but not an awful lot, mind you. I would have liked to have seen really big arsenal of weapons and a better variety in enemies, but it doesn't take away from the fun. The best new weapon I found was this almost Gauss rifle, which fires a bullet so fast that as soon as you press the mouse and pull that trigger, your bullet will hit the enemy, killing them instantly, which is completely different from all the other weapons where you have to assess where the enemy will move to and shoot, hoping the bullet will get to them. It's a real lifesaver sometimes when you needed to take out an enemy who is out of melee reach, but you are a sitting duck to their gunfire. Some enemies also have most of their body as invulnerable material, with only one limb being vulnerable to gunfire. This made for much more tactical decisions in gunfights and just threw you off guard a bit, which was pretty cool. As for maps, there are a limited amount and these will be repeated throughout the whole game, but Mind Control Delete is not like the original. Every level doesn't require the player to memorize routes, enemy spawns, and basically get good at the game. Instead, every level is completely randomized. Enemy spawns will completely vary in each level. Enemy types will change up each time you go back, and sometimes weapons will be in different areas when you load into the game. This randomization makes the maps not feel overly repetitive, as each time you go there you have to expect the unexpected, but it was a bit sad to see the same locations over and over again, even if the gameplay was sort of different each time. Some maps were really cool, like the club with its Doom style music playing in the background. It creates this really intense action film style of combat and it was just great to play. But after the 10th time playing this map, I got a bit bored of the same small layout and same music playing over and over again. I was hoping for some variety in locations, maybe some end of the section new level would have made it feel better, or maybe just some unique colour on screen would have helped vary these levels up. Speaking of the random style of gameplay, this in my eyes is good to some extent, but sometimes the random nature of the game is just so unfair and really penalises the player for no reason. You could be the best super hot player in the world, but all it takes is for one random enemy to spawn directly behind you out of the blue and they can just wipe out your health instantly. As I say, there's no memorising where enemies come from, so every time you jump into the dojo or the club, it'll be a completely different experience to last, and enemies can just spawn whenever they want and wherever they want. The game, as I say, takes a more roguelike route, and instead of having just single levels you need to complete like a standard puzzle type game, in Mind Control Delete you get mission hubs consisting of 4 to about 6 or 7 levels. Instead of having a single health core, you now have 2 or 3 at the start, and the aim of the game is to complete these mission sections without losing your health cores, meaning this is much more out of an endurance test than the memorizing first game. If you lose your health cores during any of the levels within this mission hub, be that the first mission or the last mission, you reset and go back to the start, losing all your progress, which can be extremely frustrating, especially if you are hit by that unlucky RNG spawn. I'm not a big fan of roguelike games simply because I'm just not very good at them, but with Mind Control Delete it was extremely rewarding and didn't feel like too much of a chore if I did die within a level. Luckily the whole game doesn't reset and you got to go right back to the beginning. Instead this time you just have to redo those specific level layouts, which can be annoying but not as annoying as restarting the whole game. But what makes Mind Control Delete stand out so much for me is the hacks and ability which help you progress through these randomized levels. Within this game, after every level completion you are able to unlock a new hack. That can be a lunge to enemies, a bullet reflect ability with swords, or just more impactful throwing powers. These can be selected at rest sections within the levels and at the start of the mission hubs. My favourite of these was the explosive throwable items, turning bottles and other pointless items that usually stun enemies into grenades, meaning that you can wipe out groups of enemies by just throwing anything around you. This makes gameplay feel new and refreshing and allows you to just experiment far more. Once again, the choice in abilities at each section is completely random and you always get a choice of 2 each time. You can also scrap the hack abilities completely and choose to start with more health or recharge all your cores if you have taken damage within previous levels, meaning that going on to the last 2 levels for example, you are able to go into them fully refreshed, knowing that unless you make multiple mistakes, you got far more of a chance to succeed and complete the level. I really like this decision and love the roguelike direction that they have taken for Mind Control Delete. It makes it feel so much more rewarding than the original game, and that's not to say the original game wasn't rewarding. I just feel like Mind Control Delete is far more rewarding than the original, and having all these awesome new abilities makes that already amazing and unique gameplay feel so much more fun. It's such a shame that some levels feel super repetitive at times. It's also a shame that sometimes the RNG nature of the enemies can penalise even the best of players. But all in all, the changes that have been made to Superhot in Mind Control Delete have pushed the game forward and made that super unique and arguably revolutionary mechanic into a far more in-depth game that is much longer than the original and allows for far more experimentation, instead of just trying to learn layouts and memorise enemy movements. I really think they have gone in a great direction with Mind Control Delete, adding new abilities and roguelike elements to the game. It fits the playstyle and makes it so very rewarding. With just a few changes like some more map varieties and maybe a better RNG spawn system that doesn't penalise the player as much, this game can be really something special. Then again, I say that like it isn't already. Okay, so Superhot Mind Control Delete gameplay is special and unique, and honestly, I love it. There you go. You happy? But finally, let's talk about the technical side to the game.
Super hot, super hot.
Mind Control Delete doesn't really have anything new visually or within its settings that makes it stand out compared to the other titles. The graphics are much crisper than the originals, but there's nothing really that makes it stand out as more refined or graphically different, which is fine to be honest. The game has a unique art style, and the second you see the enemies you know exactly what game you are playing. It also helps with the gameplay as enemies stand out from the background. Graphically, I'm really not that bothered personally. I think it has a unique art style and it doesn't really need to change that. It's on brand and makes gameplay easy to understand. I love that they brought in a feature where you can watch back your gameplay at real-time speed. Witnessing these superhuman abilities play out is so great to watch, and you can also save the replays if you make a really good move and take out 3 or so enemies at once. A really great feature that is fun thing to witness at the end of every level. The game on a technical standpoint runs fine. I never felt like it needed polishing, the gameplay handled fine, the game never crashed, it ran super smoothly on my PC. It's a very polished game. There's also a lack of any music again. I don't know if it's not cheap to have music playing, but every level is void of a soundtrack or soundscape, and there's just nothing playing. As I mentioned earlier, I really loved the club where it had this epic Doom style music playing whilst you fight through the enemies in front of you. It heightened that immersion and made it feel like an epic battle sequence. But apart from that, every other level is void of any soundtrack or sound design, which is a real shame and makes it just feel void of life. On top of that, I think having a minimal UI is great, but when the levels are designed where you have to kill a certain amount of enemies to complete it, it baffles me that there's nothing on screen showing you what the objective of the game is. Just a little number on the screen like enemies to kill 16 remaining would be great. I get that it's to make you feel anxious as to how many you can take on, and that relief you get when you complete the level is great, but I did feel like there was a lack of communication with you and the game regarding this. In the original, it was to wipe out all the enemies in the level, but this game, you just have to kill a certain amount. So why not show us on screen the number of enemies we need to take out? That is probably a personal choice for me though. I was just confused early on within the game when there were 3 enemies on screen, and when I killed one, the level ended. I didn't understand why, and that for me was because of the lack of communication regarding what I was meant to be doing within the levels. And also, I still had the same mentality from the first game. But anyways, with all that said, is Superhot Mind Control Delete worth getting? Well, the best thing about this game is if you have the original Superhot, this game is completely free and you are just able to play it straight off the bat, which is fantastic customer friendly business by the Superhot team. It allows for far more of that fantastic gameplay and just rewards the player for supporting the original game. But for new players who have never played Superhot, is it worth it? Absolutely. Although I have my problems with some of the features within the game, I absolutely adore that gameplay mechanic of only moving time when you move. I love the combat, I love the new abilities and the feeling I get when I complete all the levels of one section. I don't expect a great story with this indie game, and I do find that it's pretty pretentious forcing players to keep the game open and just wait, but if you don't mind that, then you will have an absolute blast dodging bullets, throwing katanas and wiping out red enemy after red enemy in a John Wick's kind of manner. Superhot Mind Control Delete is a fantastic game and well worth the playthrough, both for fans of the original and the VR game, and for new players who have just found this franchise. I totally recommend Superhot Mind Control Delete for its once again super unique gameplay and just all round fun. But those are my thoughts on Superhot Mind Control Delete. If you have played the game, let me know what you thought in the comments below. If you like these types of reviews, then please do not hesitate to give me a sub or just like the video. It really helps out massively. I do want to say a big thanks to my patrons, our Big Fish, Mr. Duquesne23, our Sharks JP, Dylan and Morgan Brazier, and our 2 massive Megalodons, Sinus and JJD896. Thank you all so much for your ongoing support. If you'd like to support this channel, I'll leave my Patreon, Discord, Twitter and Twitch links in the description below, as I will be streaming on there as well as here real soon. You can also become a member if you want a sweet badge next to your name during the streams. But anyway, that is all for now. Thank you all so much for watching, and I shall see you all in the next one. Cheers.